A few years ago, I embarked on a marathon weekend in front of my computer, fueled by copious amounts of caffeine and the energy drink, Red Bull. Sleep was scarce, and I was deeply engrossed in whatever had captured my online attention. Periodically, I felt a subtle itch on my arms, akin to the sensation of a stray hair brushing against the skin. Each time, I'd absent-mindedly swipe at the area and return my focus to the screen. However, as the itching became more frequent, I started to question my sanity. Was this just sleep deprivation playing tricks on me? Were these phantom itches? Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted them, tiny spiders crawling on my arms. A mix of horror and disbelief washed over me. As I looked closer, I noticed delicate strands of webs shimmering in the light, with more of these minuscule arachnids descending around me. Tracing their origin, I spotted a small hole in the ceiling directly above my workstation. Reacting swiftly, I grabbed a can of wasp spray and directed a forceful blast into the hole. What happened next was the stuff of nightmares. Hundreds of tiny spiders began pouring out, streaming down on silken threads, enveloping me and my workspace. I was suddenly in the midst of a spider deluge, their tiny bodies crawling over me, making the earlier itches seem trivial. It was an unsettling end to an already sleepless weekend. Coming home late from work, I was exhausted and just looking forward to unwinding. As I approached my front stoop, I walked straight into a massive spider web. At first, it was just an annoyance, something to brush off. But then I glanced down and noticed something that sent a jolt of panic through me. There were 20 to 30 tiny baby spiders crawling all over me. I started freaking out, frantically trying to brush them off. My eyes darted to my door, where I saw the parents, two enormous spiders, nearly the size of my hand, sitting menacingly by the entrance. There was no way I was going through that door. Panicked, I sprinted to the back of the house, tearing off my clothes as I went. I burst into the bathroom and jumped into the shower, turning the water on full blast. As I scrubbed frantically, I could feel the spiders being washed away, and I watched in horror as more and more of them started falling out of my hair. It was a nightmarish ordeal I won't soon forget. I got home late one night, exhausted and barely functioning. My phone was about to die, so I did what I always did, reached under my bed to find the charger. But instead of the familiar feel of the charging cable, my hand landed on something squishy. Curious and a bit confused, I started poking and squeezing it. That's when it happened. Suddenly, I felt hundreds of tiny legs prickling my skin, crawling up my arm. I yanked my arm out from under the bed and screamed when I saw about 30 baby spiders swarming over me. Panic surged through me as I shook them off, ran to tell my parents, and bolted to the shower. It turned out that the squishy thing was a baby spider sack, and the real horror? There was a massive mother spider living under my bed the whole time. I woke up in the dead of night, still groggy, feeling something huge crawling around in my bed. My half-asleep brain immediately assumed it was a spider or something equally creepy. In a panic, I jumped out of bed and flung the covers off, but nothing was there. Thinking it must have been part of a dream, I brushed it off and tried to get back to sleep. The next night, the feeling came back, this time on my arms. Again, I jumped out of bed, heart racing, and tore off the covers. But once more, there was nothing. Frustrated and a bit unnerved, I convinced myself that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But then it happened again the following night. The sensation of something huge crawling on my arm jolted me awake. Still in that dazed, confused state, I jumped out of bed, certain this time I was imagining it. I ripped the covers off, and that's when I saw it. The biggest spider I'd ever seen, bigger than a tarantula. It quickly scuttled under my bed and out of sight as I screamed and ran to my parents' room, terrified, to wake up my dad. This happened when I was staying with my grandma for the weekend. My uncle still lived with her, and occasionally I would stay over to work with my uncle for some good pay anyway. I was exhausted after a long day's work with my uncle, so I basically fell into the rickety old guest bed upstairs. I watched some TV for about 10 minutes before just deciding to go to sleep. It was a hot night, How on hot nights you constantly have to flip over the pillow to the cooler side. Well, when I did that, I put my head back. Down on the pillow, I didn't get a show. Off the cushiony pillow on my cheek, I felt a furry, indescribable object press up on my face. I jumped up in response to it and saw a giant, full-grown huntsman spider sitting on my pillow. I fell to the opposite side of the bed, and I guess the shaking scared the thing because it took off at the speed of light. Where it went, I have no idea. I'm pretty sure the thing is still in my grandma's house.